Some people were born in newsrooms, and once you see how the story was packaged, you'll never trust a famous nickname again. Today, 33 historical figures your teachers lied about they were media inventions. You watch Paul Revere shrink into one ride, not a network. Stay for number 33, where the truth flips and the nickname hits hardest. Now let's start with Shakespeare, the name that sold the theater world. Shakespeare may have been a brand, not one man. The world built a billion-dollar author from a shaky paper trail. In Elizabethan London, plays moved fast, and names sold tickets. William Shakespeare left signatures, but almost no letters or manuscripts. Actors like Richard Burbage and managers handled the Globe's business side. After his death, the first folio gathered plays friends claimed he wrote. That gap fueled theories about Christopher Marlowe, Francis Bacon, even Oxford. Meanwhile, playwrights recycled plots, shared scenes, and punched up dialogue nightly. So the byline could be a brand stamp, not a solitary genius. If you were selling drama to crowds, why not sell one name? 2. Socrates may be Plato's character, not a biography. Socrates shaped philosophy, yet he exists mainly through other people's ink. In classical Athens, he questioned young men in the agora all day. He wrote nothing himself, which is perfect for a legend factory. Plato turned him into a starring voice in dialogues and trials. Xenophon offered a different Socrates, and Aristophanes mocked him on stage. At his trial, charges of impiety and corrupting youth hung heavy. The famous hemlock scene arrives, filtered through students who wanted meaning. So, when teachers quote him, they may be quoting Plato's drama. Is the real Socrates hiding, or was he always a character? 3. Homer may be a tradition, not a single poet. 2 epic poems made Homer immortal, but the author is slippery. The Iliad and Odyssey traveled by memory, sung by Greek bards. In Ionia, performers stitched lines together, adjusting heroes for each crowd. Ancient cities like Chios and Smyrna claimed him like a local mascot. Later scholars in Alexandria tried pinning one version down for libraries. They argued over dialects, repeated phrases, and seams where stories join. The more you look, the more it resembles a long-running songwriter room. So whose mind built Achilles, Odysseus, and that famous wooden horse? 4. King Arthur was built from many warriors' legends. Arthur rules pop culture, but early Britain leaves him mostly shadowy. Stories place him after Rome, fighting Saxons in misty battlefields. Welsh poems hint at warriors, while later chronicles inflate one heroic king. Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote a sweeping narrative that Europe devoured. Then came Camelot, Lancelot, and the Round Table, basically medieval fan fiction. French romance writers made love triangles the engine, not battlefield strategy. Relics, swords, and questing knights kept shifting, depending on the storyteller. By the time Mallory compiled it, Arthur was a full franchise. Was there one war leader, or just many stitched into one crown? 5. Robin Hood was a story, shaped by political propaganda. Robin Hood steals every spotlight, yet his origin keeps changing masks. Medieval ballads placed him in Sherwood, clashing with Nottingham's authority. Sometimes he's a yeoman, sometimes a noble, depending on the decade. Mayday games and traveling performers helped spread the outlaw like a meme. Later versions added Maid Marian, Friar Tuck, and a merry crew. Politics seeped in, wicked sheriffs, squeezed peasants, and rich men feeling guilt. Princes and kings appear when writers need a reset button. Each era remakes Robin to fit its own anger and fantasy. So which Robin did you meet first, and who sold him to you? 6. Sun Tzu's Art of War was edited for centuries. Sun Tzu gets quoted in boardrooms, yet the book shows seams. The Art of War is set in ancient China during turmoil. Tradition links it to a general named Sun Wu, from Wu. Yet historians see later hands, trimming, adding, and reorganizing chapters. Bamboo texts and competing military manuals show ideas circulating beyond one mind. Some passages read like court advice, others like field notes for commanders. Even the famous lines shift between translations, like whispers in a hallway. So the name Sun Tzu can work like a stamp of authority. When you quote it, are you quoting one strategist or centuries? 7. Laozi and the Tao Te Ching may be collective. Laozi is credited with a whole worldview, yet he drifts like smoke. Legend places him as an old archivist leaving Zhou China on an ox. At a border gate, a guard supposedly asked him to write his wisdom. The Tao Te Ching appears, but its authorship looks more like an anthology. Early bamboo slips show multiple versions, with lines shifting like river stones. Different chapters echo debates among warring states thinkers, not one quiet sage. Later Taoist groups wrapped the text in legends to boost spiritual authority. Soon Laozi became a godlike figure, complete with temples and titles. So is the book a single voice, or a chorus pretending? 8. Cleopatra's femme fatale image was Roman spin. Cleopatra's image was weaponized, then polished into timeless glamour worldwide. In Alexandria, she ruled Egypt and negotiated with Rome's rising powers. Julius Caesar backed her, and later Mark Antony tied his fate tightly. After Actium, Octavian needed a story, so he framed her as danger. Coins and statues show a political ruler, not a Hollywood seductress. Roman poets emphasized luxury, spells, and foreign menace to sell victory. Centuries later, painters and playwrights turned that spin into velvet drama. Even her death scene keeps changing, from ask myth to messy politics. So when you picture Cleopatra, ask who wrote the picture first. 9. Mary Magdalene's reputation was shaped by medieval sermons. Mary Magdalene's name drifted, and the church kept steering it. In the Gospels, she follows Jesus and appears at crucial moments. She is from Magdala, on the Sea of Galilee, not Jerusalem. Later tradition blended her with an unnamed sinner and Mary of Bethany. A famous sermon by Pope Gregory helped that fusion stick in medieval Europe. Meanwhile, apocryphal texts cast her as a bold disciple, sometimes argued against. In Provence legends, she sails to France, turning local churches into magnets. So one woman became two roles, witness and warning label, depending on era. Which version did you learn, and who benefited from that version? 10. Joan of Arc became a poster, not a person. Joan of Arc died as a heretic, then returned as France's icon. In the 100 Years' War, she claimed visions and met Charles at Chinon. French troops followed her to Orléans, where the siege suddenly broke. Soon she pushed for Reims, and Charles was crowned in the cathedral. Captured near Compiègne, she was sold to the English and tried at Rouen. Court records show sharp answers, yet later art paints her as pure innocence. A later retrial reversed the verdict, giving politicians a clean symbol. In modern wars, posters and speeches use Joan like a reusable banner. So was she a teenage commander, or a story every era recuts? 11. William Tell may be Switzerland's national marketing myth. William Tell fires one arrow, and Switzerland gains a national heartbeat. The tale sets you in Altdorf, facing Habsburg power and local resentment. A bailiff named Gessler demands a hat salute, like a loyalty test. Tell refuses, and suddenly his son's apple becomes the whole country's stakes. He splits the apple, then admits a second bolt was meant for Gessler. Early mentions appear centuries after the supposed events, in Swiss chronicles and songs. The story echoes older legends, like Denmark's Polnadotok, raising eyebrows. Yet Schiller's play and paintings made Tell feel as real as mountains. So did Tell exist, or did Switzerland aim an arrow at itself? 12. Pope Joan was a scandal tale that never happened. A female pope would rewrite church history, but the tale wobbles under light. Medieval stories claim she disguised herself and rose through Rome's clerical ranks. Some versions place her between Leo and Benedict, sliding into official gaps. The scandal explodes when she supposedly gives birth during a public procession. Crowds, curses, and a sudden death make it sound like grim street theater. Yet Vatican lists and contemporary records never mention her, which is telling. The story likely grew from satire and rumor, then hardened into a fact. Printers loved it, because scandal sells faster than theology ever will. So are we watching history or a medieval gossip hitting the big stage? 13. Mulan may be folklore, not verified history. Mulan rides into legend, yet her first appearance is a ballad. The Ballad of Mulan places her in northern China amid constant war. She takes her father's place, buys a horse, and rides off disguised. For years she fights, then refuses office and returns to her village. Later retellings add side characters, romance, and tests of loyalty. Different dynasties claimed her, shifting her hometown and even her era. That flexibility suggests folklore, the kind that adapts like water to a cup. Still, her story anchored real themes: duty, family, and survival under empire. 14. Aesop may be a name for many storytellers. Aesop's fables taught generations, but Aesop himself stays oddly unpinned. Ancient Greeks called him a slave storyteller, moving between masters and cities. Some traditions place him on Samos, others connect him to Thrace. The fables spread orally, then scribes collected them long after his supposed lifetime. Over centuries, new animals and morals slipped in like extra seasoning. One biography even claims he met kings and philosophers, which sounds suspiciously convenient. A famous death story sends him to Delphi, punished after political conflict. By Roman times, Aesop becomes a label meaning quick moral punchlines. So did one man write them, or did the crowd keep writing? 15. Pythagoras was a brand for a secretive school. Pythagoras is treated like a lone genius, but he led a club. In southern Italy at Croton, followers lived strict rules and shared property. They believed numbers explain everything, from music to the movement of stars. But members often credited discoveries to Pythagoras, even when others did the work. That includes the famous theorem, which existed in some form before him. Outsiders saw them as mysterious, whispering about reincarnation and strange diets. Political backlash hit, the community burned, and stories scattered across Greece. Later writers patched him into a single genius, smoothing messy group work. So is Pythagoras one man, or the brand name for a movement? 16. Lycurgus of Sparta may be a lawgiver made up. Lycurgus supposedly designed Sparta, yet no one can quite catch him. Greek writers describe reforms: shared meals, iron money, and tough youth training. Spartans pointed to an oracle and a great rhetor as founding authority. But the details vary wildly between Herodotus, Xenophon, and later Plutarch. Some accounts send Lycurgus traveling, borrowing ideas from Crete and Egypt. Others say he vanished on purpose, so Spartans would keep laws unchanged. That disappearance is perfect storytelling. No successor, no edits, just legend. So his name can serve as a legal seal on whatever Sparta wanted. When a society needs a founder, who better than someone you cannot question? 17. Ragnar Lothbrok may be a saga mashup hero. Ragnar Lothbrok feels real, but his life reads like stitched sagas. Norse stories send him raiding England and Francia, chasing fame and loot. One tale claims he attacked Paris, demanding ransom from terrified Franks. Another gives him a snake pit death, setting up revenge by his sons. Those sons, like Ivar the Boneless, appear in more reliable chronicles. Medieval writers blended different leaders, dates, and raids into one super Viking. Even his nickname, Lothbrok, signals story flavor, not government paperwork. Later national pride polished him, turning violence into heroic destiny. So is Ragnar a man, or a character built to sell Viking glory? 18. Prester John was a phantom king Europe invented. Prester John promised a powerful Christian ally, and Europe chased a mirage. In medieval courts, letters described a distant king ruling rivers of gems. He supposedly commanded armies, strange beasts, and a perfect kingdom beyond Islam. Crusader hopes latched on because desperation makes people swallow wild mail. At first, they searched Central Asia, then shifted toward India on maps. Later, the target moved again, as Europeans heard rumors of Ethiopia's emperors. Diplomats and missionaries carried gifts, expecting paradise, meeting real politics instead. The legend kept adapting, like a rumor that refuses to die. So who invented Prester John, and how many decisions followed that fiction? 19. Ned Ludd was a signature, not a real leader. Ned Ludd sounds like a rebel, yet he may be pure fiction. In England's Midlands, textile workers feared new frames would erase their livelihoods. Groups attacked factories at night, smashing stocking frames and vanishing fast. Threatening letters arrived signed Ned Ludd or King Ludd, like a logo. Officials treated the name as real, sending troops and offering rewards. Trials in York and elsewhere punished many workers, while the ghost stayed safe. The myth helped coordination, because a symbol travels faster than a meeting. Even today, Luddite is shorthand, proof the character outlived the riots. So, did Ned swing a hammer, or did everyone swing the name? 20. Captain Swing was a fake name for rioters. Captain Swing terrified rural England, yet he was basically a signature. Around 1830, farm laborers faced low wages and machines replacing winter work. Threshing machines became targets because they turned food into unemployment overnight. Then letters arrived threatening landlords and parsons, stamped with Captain Swing. The name spread from Kent across counties, like a wildfire rumor. Arson, smashed equipment, and midnight marches forced officials into panic. Authorities launched mass arrests, hanging some and transporting others far away. Yet no single captain appeared, because the point was never one man. It was a male merge rebellion, and the pen carried the pitchfork. 21. Betsy Ross's flag story was born from later PR. Betsy Ross gets credit for the flag, but the story shows up late. She was a Philadelphia upholsterer, a real person with real wartime work. The famous scene claims George Washington visited her with a secret design. She supposedly suggested 5-point stars because one snip makes them faster. But no contemporary documents mention the meeting, the commission, or the moment. The tale surged when her grandson told it in the late 19th century. By then, Americans wanted founding stories with friendly faces, not committees. So Betsy became a perfect character, local, skilled, and easy to picture. If the myth feels cozy, ask what it hides about how flags happen. 22. Paul Revere's ride was supercharged by a poem. In Boston, patriots watched British troops and planned signals from the Old North Church. Revere rode toward Lexington, but William Dawes took a different route. They met Samuel Prescott, and the trio pushed toward Concord with warnings. Revere was detained by a British patrol, while Prescott slipped away into darkness. Local riders carried the alarm onward, turning one message into a relay. A later poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow simplified everything into one silhouette. It worked because classrooms love one name more than messy networks. So the real story isn't one rider, it's a whole town moving. 23. George Washington's Cherry Tree Tale was pure book marketing. That cherry tree story made Washington saintly, and it was basically advertising. After the revolution, Americans craved a spotless founder they could trust. Parson Mason Locke Weems wrote biographies that mixed morals with marketable scenes. He introduced young George chopping a cherry tree, then confessing immediately. It wasn't about botany, it was about honesty as a brand promise. Teachers repeated it, parents smiled, and the myth gained patriotic muscle. Meanwhile, Washington's real life included debts, land deals, and hard choices. The fable survived because it fits on a single page and sticks. So when you hear, "I cannot tell a lie," think about who sold it. 24. Johnny Appleseed was real then turned into slogan. Johnny Appleseed wasn't just a saint, he ran frontier nurseries. His name was John Chapman, roaming the Ohio frontier in the early 1800s. He planted nurseries, then sold young trees to settlers arriving behind him. Stories say he walked barefoot with a pot hat, which sounds like branding. But he also carried Swedenborgian religious ideas and preached in cabins. Many apples became hard cider stock, not shiny lunchbox fruit. Later writers trimmed the business angle, leaving a gentle nature mascot. That makes frontier expansion feel harmless, like planting instead of taking. So the legend spreads seeds, but it also hides the marketplace. 25. Daniel Boone was packaged as frontier hero for politics. Daniel Boone's adventures were real, but print turned them into legend. In the late 1700s, Boone explored Kentucky along routes like the Wilderness Road. He worked with land speculators, not just adventure, which changes the vibe. A writer named John Filson published a Boone narrative that Americans devoured. Soon Boone is dodging bullets, taming wilderness, and speaking like a folk sage. Real Boone was captured, traded, negotiated, and often depended on other people. Dime novels and almanacs kept inflating him, like a balloon that never pops. By the time he died in Missouri, the myth had already moved west. So did Boone lead history? Or did history use Boone as a mascot? 26. Davy Crockett's image was a merchandising machine. Davy Crockett turned into a coonskin superhero, and newspapers helped. He was a Tennessee politician and hunter, famous long before the Alamo. Then came Crockett almanacs, comic book ancestors packed with ridiculous feats. They showed him wrestling bears, cracking jokes, and outsmarting whole armies. In Texas, he joined the fight at the Alamo and died there. But even his death got packaged, sometimes heroic, sometimes tragic, always useful. Afterward, politicians and publishers used his image to sell toughness. Later TV and merchandise cemented the coonskin cap as his entire identity. So when you see Crockett, are you seeing a man or a mascot suit? 27. Buffalo Bill sold the Wild West as traveling media. Buffalo Bill didn't just live the West, he sold it like a circus. William F. Cody hunted bison and scouted, then learned crowds loved stories. He launched Buffalo Bill's Wild West, mixing rodeo, sharpshooting, and staged battles. The show toured the United States and Europe, even stopping in London. Real Lakota performers joined, while audiences watched reenacted Indian fights as entertainment. Cody cast himself as hero, turning complex history into neat stunts. Newspapers amplified it, and suddenly the West had a standard costume. Even Annie Oakley became a headline, proving the brand could hire stars. So when you imagine cowboys, you might be watching Cody's stage directions. 28. Annie Oakley was branded into a national advertisement. Annie Oakley dazzled crowds, then tabloids nearly erased her career. Born Phoebe Ann Moses in Ohio, she hunted to support her family. Her shooting talent took her into Buffalo Bill's Wild West as a star. Crowds watched her hit tiny targets, sometimes tossing cards and slicing edges. In Europe, she performed before royalty, turning marksmanship into polite theater. Then press rumors accused her of theft and drug use, wrecking her image. The scandal involved another woman using her name, and corrections came too late. She fought back, sued newspapers, and rebuilt her reputation with grit. So her story shows how fame can miss the target, even with perfect aim. 29. Al Capone became a Hollywood myth, bigger than reality. Al Capone's grin made him famous, even as Chicago bled. During Prohibition, he ran bootlegging and gambling, while politicians promised moral order. Rival gangs fought, and the St. Valentine's Day Massacre sealed his monster brand. Reporters followed his suits, his smile, and his jokes, like celebrity coverage. Meanwhile, Capone played Robin Hood in interviews, handing out money for photos. The public picture grew bigger than the paper trail of who ordered what. Federal agents finally nailed him on taxes, not the violence everyone remembered. That twist made the story feel like a movie, so movies kept repeating it. 30. Rasputin's evil monk legend was tabloid amplification. Rasputin's legend grew so large it swallowed the Romanovs' reality. He was a Siberian peasant turned mystic, arriving in St. Petersburg. The Romanov court saw him as a healer for Alexei, the hemophiliac heir. Rumors spread through salons, drunkenness, affairs, and secret influence over Empress Alexandra. Political enemies weaponized those whispers, printing stories that made him seem unstoppable. His murder story got mythologized too, with shifting details about poison and bullets. The key point is simpler: a crumbling empire needed a scapegoat. So Rasputin became a headline-shaped monster, convenient for everyone angry. When you hear his name, remember how fast gossip travels in a palace. 31. Mata Hari was sold as super spy for headlines. Mata Hari is remembered as the ultimate spy, yet her case was shaky. Born Margaretha Zell in the Netherlands, she reinvented herself on Paris stages. Her exotic dancer persona drew officers and diplomats during World War I. French authorities accused her of working for Germany, using codes and payments. The trial leaned on secret files and innuendo, not clear battlefield intelligence. She was executed near Paris, and the image became instant wartime propaganda. Later films dressed her up as a master agent because tragedy sells tickets. In reality, she may have been a minor courier caught in a bigger panic. So was Mata Hari dangerous, or just dangerously easy to frame? 32. Calamity Jane's story was largely self-made publicity. Calamity Jane talked big, and dime novels made it bigger. Her real name was Martha Jane Canary, moving through frontier towns and jobs. In Deadwood, South Dakota, she crossed paths with gamblers and soldiers. She claimed friendship with Wild Bill Hickok, but records and timelines argue back. Dime novel writers loved her nickname, turning rough survival into dramatic scenes. Jane herself told tall tales, sometimes for money, sometimes for attention. She later joined traveling shows, performing a version of herself for crowds. It's a role flip. The person becomes the character, then chases it. So with Calamity Jane, where is the biography end and the billboard begin? 33. Captain Kidd was turned into pirate icon by pamphlets. Captain Kidd's name screams pirate, but he started with a legal commission. In the Atlantic world, William Kidd sailed with papers to hunt pirates. Politics and investors hovered, because privateering blurred profit and public duty. Then he seized a rich ship, and arguments erupted about whether it was lawful. Back in New York and London, enemies labeled him pirate to save themselves. Kidd was tried in London, and the courtroom drama fed public obsession. Pamphlets and ballads turned him into a warning story for sailors. Then came buried treasure rumors, because nothing sells like hidden gold. So Kidd's legacy is half paperwork, half pulp fiction, blended together.